If you like this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos. Today's article is a bit different from most of my articles. This one is a three-part feature that is focused on controversial photographs about the UFO mystery. As to why it's a bit different, it's because there's not a UFO in sight. Rather, the pictures I'm going to talk about are from very different angles. You'll see what I mean. From 2007 to 2010 I investigated the strange story of a US government think tank-style group nicknamed the Collins Elite, as told in my 2010 book, Final Events, a story that has its origins in 1991, even though the group was created decades earlier. They believe that the UFO phenomenon has, quite literally, demonic origins and that the extraterrestrial angle is merely an ingenious, deceptive ruse employed by Satan. The goal, to further allow his minions to get their claws into us all, and lead us down a distinctly dark pathway before Judgment Day, and the final countdown begins. As someone who holds no particular views on the nature of religion or life after death, I have no real opinion on the validity of the beliefs of the Collins Elite, aside from the fact that I find it fascinating that such a think tank group actually exists. But what interests me most of all, is that a certain theme runs through much of this story that can also be found elsewhere at an official level, and it's one I find somewhat disturbing. It's a matter of strange and suspicious deaths and photographs. I was put on the trail of the Collins Elite by a man named Ray Boche. As well as being an Anglican priest, Ray is a former state director for Nebraska with the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. In a truly fascinating interview with Ray in 2007, he told me how he had been clandestinely approached, in 1991, by two Department of Defense (DoD) physicists working on a classified program to try and contact what was described to Ray as non-human entities, or NHEs. In ufological terms, we would call these entities the diminutive, black-eyed greys. For the people on the DoD project, they may very well have begun with that view too, but ultimately they came around to the notion that this was merely a terrible ruse. Like the Collins Elite, Ray's ufological deep throat-like sources finally accepted that the entities at issue were demonic. But there was an interesting, and disturbing, further aspect to this revelation. There were those on the project that believed engaging the NHEs in some form of Faustian pact, as a means to understand and harness their extraordinary and potentially lethal powers, could actually aid in the development of occult-based weapons of war, such as the ability to provoke psychic assassinations. Ray told me the following: "I had no way of knowing before our face-to-face meeting if there was any legitimacy to this at all. I wasn't given any information at all before our meeting, just the indication that they were involved in areas of research I would find interesting, and that they had some concerns they wished to discuss with me." Both men were physicists. I'd guess they were probably in their early to mid-50s, and they were in a real moral dilemma. Both of them were Christians and were working on a Department of Defense project that involved trying to contact the NHS. In fact, this was described to me as an obsessive effort. And part of this effort was to try and control the NHS and use their powers in military weapons applications and intelligence areas. Ray continued, most of it was related to psychotronic weaponry and remote viewing, and even deaths by what were supposed to be psychic methods. The project personnel was allowed to assume they had somehow technologically mastered the ability to do what the NHS could do, remote viewing and psychotronics. But, in actuality, it was these entities doing it all the time or allowing it to happen, for purposes that suited their deception. With both psychotronic weapons and remote viewing, I was told that the DoD had not really mastered a technology to do that at all. They were allowed by the NHS to think that this is what they had done. But the NHS was always the causal factor. Now, we get to the matter of those mysterious and highly controversial photographs. Here are Ray's words on this particularly strange and sinister issue. Of what Ray saw himself, he said, "They showed me a dozen photos of 3 different people, 4 photos of each person, who had apparently been killed by these experiments, italics mine. These were all post-mortem photographs, taken in situ, after the experiments. The areas shown in all of the photographs were like a dentist's chair or a barber's chairs, and the bodies were still in those positions, sitting in the chairs. Still there, with EEG and EKG leads coming off of them. They were all wired. It was a very clinical setting, and there was no indication of who they were. It was a very disturbing sort of thing. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, if these are real, who would they have gotten for these experiments? Were they volunteers? Were they some sort of prisoners? I have no idea. Were they American? Were they foreign? There was no way to tell. Over the years, I've tried to find those elusive photos, but with no luck. I'm still trying, though.